The aftermath of the skirmish. Smoke still clung to the jagged cliffs like a wounded animal refusing to let go. Corporal Elias Vance crouched low among the shattered bulkheads, rifle raised, every sense straining. The fight for Outpost Arel had ended only minutes ago, but the ground still trembled with distant detonations. His earpiece crackled with static and terse reports, squad mates counting heads, medics calling for stretchers, officers barking orders to secure prisoners. Elias picked his way across a blackened ridge, boots sinking into ash. The crimson sun of the moon burned through the haze, casting long shadows over the dead. He tried not to look at the faces, some human, some not. Instead, he focused on the wreckage ahead, the place where his sensors pinged faint movement. A harsh rasp reached his ears. He pivoted, rifle locking onto a twisted shape half buried under a collapsed barricade. At first, it looked like a mound of armor and debris. Then it moved, one massive arm twitching, clawed fingers digging weakly into the dirt. Elias froze. Croth. The alien warrior's segmented plates were cracked open, ichors seeping through. Forearms lay splayed. Two were clearly broken, bent at impossible angles. His lower body was pinned beneath jagged ferrocrete. A jagged breathing hiss came from its mandibles. Its black eyes rolled toward Elias, gleaming faintly. Every instinct screamed enemy. Elias tightened his finger on the trigger. The Croth Dominion had taken 3 colonies, slaughtered families, and cost Elias his brother. His HUD flagged the creature with a red diamond. Hostile combatant, incapacitated. The warrior shifted and spoke, halting, guttural common tone. "Help me." Elias's finger twitched on the trigger. His comm crackled. "Vance status." He swallowed, voice dry. "Movement here. One of them. It's wounded." A pause, then a curt reply. "Eliminate and proceed. We're not in the business of mercy." Elias crouched lower, rifle still trained. The alien's breaths came in wet gasps. He was enormous even in defeat, armored scales smeared with soot, yet there was something almost fragile in the way his upper hand curled weakly against his chest. The corporal scanned the perimeter. No other survivors. No ambush. Just the wind whistling through cracked girders. His brother's face flashed in his mind. Caleb, trapped under rubble years ago during the siege of New Jakarta. Command had pulled out and left him there. Elias had begged them to send help. They hadn't. Caleb's beacon went dark 6 hours later. Elias cursed under his breath and slung his rifle. He edged closer, boots crunching over debris. The Croth flinched, a low growl rumbling from deep in its chest. One clawed hand reached weakly toward a shattered blade lying in the dust, but the effort died before it began. "Don't move," Elias muttered, though his voice was softer than it should have been. He knelt, scanning the alien's wounds. Plasma burns along the thorax. Crushed legs. Breathing shallow, one lung probably collapsed. No way he'd survive without intervention. "Why?" the alien rasped, mandibles clicking. "Why help enemy?" Elias shook his head. "I'm not sure yet." He pulled a medfoam pack from his belt. Human field kits weren't made for Croth biology, but sealing the worst gash was better than nothing. He pressed the nozzle against a split in the alien's carapace. The creature spasmed, a hiss escaping between mandibles. The foam expanded, hardening into a pale sheath. Over the comm, another voice snapped. "Vance, report. Did you neutralize the target?" Elias keyed his mic off. "Sorry, guys," he whispered to himself, "but I'm not leaving him." He scavenged a carbon strut from nearby wreckage, breaking it into makeshift splints. The alien watched with dark, unblinking eyes as Elias wrapped binding tape around a shattered arm. Dust blew across the ruined field, settling in the shallow grooves of the alien's armor. "You're going to make it," Elias said quietly, unsure if the creature even understood. "I've got you." The Croth's eyes flickered, mandibles trembling. It gave a sound that might have been a laugh or a cough or both. Elias slung his rifle across his back and dug deeper, working to free the warrior's pinned lower body. The ferrocrete slab was too heavy to move alone, but he tried anyway, bracing his boots and heaving until his muscles screamed. Behind him, The distant thunder of engines grew louder, patrol craft sweeping the area. Elias froze, heart hammering. If they found him with a live Croth, he'd face a court-martial, maybe worse. He glanced down. The alien's eyes had closed, but its breathing still rasped in shallow bursts. Elias made his decision. He bent closer, voice low. Hang in there. I'm not like them. And for the first time since the firefight ended, he felt the weight of the battlefield shift. Not in victory or defeat, but in the fragile thread of life he refused to cut. Orders and defiance. The wind picked up across the ruins, carrying flecks of ash like gray snow. Elias knelt beside the fallen Croth warrior, hands sticky with alien ichor, heart still pounding from the risk he'd taken. His comm unit hissed again. "Vance, Sitrep," barked Lieutenant Reiner. Elias swallowed, glancing at the dark eyes that flickered open under his care. "Securing the area, sir," he lied, voice steady. "Leave no hostiles alive," Reiner replied sharply. "We've got bigger problems. Regroup at Rally Point 3. The channel went dead. Elias stared down at the alien. Threx, as he'd learned from the rasped syllables the warrior had murmured while drifting in and out of consciousness. The Croth-esque mandibles twitched as he struggled to speak again. "Why stop, Death?" Elias shook his head. "Because someone should have done it for my brother. And because you're not dead yet." He adjusted the splint he'd made, tightening bindings. The foam sealant was holding, but the alien's breathing grew weaker by the minute. The weight of the ferrocrete still pinned his lower body. Elias shoved at it again, teeth gritted, boots slipping in the dirt. Nothing. He scanned the field and spotted a length of broken rebar. Using it as a lever, he wedged it under the slab and pushed with all his strength. His muscles burned. The slab shifted an inch, then another, until finally Threx's lower body was free enough for Elias to drag him clear. The alien groaned low in his throat, but didn't fight. Elias propped Threx against a fragment of bulkhead and sat back, catching his breath. "All right," he muttered, "one step at a time." The alien's eyes fluttered open. "Kill me. Easier for you." Elias gave a bitter laugh. "Sorry, big guy. Not my style." He tapped his wrist console, pulling up local terrain. The nearest friendly outpost was 6 clicks away across open ground. He couldn't call a medic, not without exposing what he was doing. And leaving Threx here meant leaving him to die. Through the haze, Elias saw a half-intact hover sled half-buried in the wreckage. He jogged over, tore away debris, and dragged it free. The repulsors whined as he kicked them online. The sled sputtered to life, hovering unsteadily. "Not pretty, but it'll do," Elias murmured. Lifting Threx onto the sled was like trying to haul a suit of powered armor filled with wet cement. Elias grunted with effort, every joint in his back screaming, but he managed to roll the alien onto the platform. The sled dipped dangerously, repulsors whining in protest, but held. Elias checked his compass and started walking, pulling the sled's guide tether. Each step crunched over debris fields, each breath tasting of smoke and copper. He kept low, scanning for movement. Patrols could still be sweeping the sector. A sudden voice crackled in his earpiece. Reiner again. "Vance, we show you moving away from Rally Point." "Confirm." Elias's mind raced. "Pursuing a signal flare," he said quickly. "Thought I saw movement. We'll rejoin in 5. "Negative. Get back here now." "That's an order." Elias cut the channel before they could argue further. For a moment, guilt and fear twisted in his gut. He was defying direct orders, risking court-martial. But when he looked back at the alien, pale ichor still seeping from his wounds, the doubt faded. If he turned back, Threx wouldn't last an hour. Threx stirred weakly, mandibles clicking. Human, foolish, helping enemy. Elias kept pulling the sled, grunting. "Maybe, or maybe I'm just stubborn." They moved through the shattered landscape, past toppled gun emplacements and scorched trees, turned to blackened stumps. Every so often, Elias crouched to listen, distant engines, shouts carried by the wind. He'd hide the sled under debris until the danger passed, then push on. Threx's breathing rattled. Elias dug into his pack, pulling out a sealed injector of nanogel, his emergency kit, worth more than a month's pay. He hesitated, then pressed it against the alien's carapace. The nanogel hissed as it deployed, glowing faintly as it spread through the Croth's system. Threx shuddered, mandibles clicking in pain, then stilled. His breathing steadied just a fraction. Elias exhaled, relief loosening the knot in his chest. That's it. Stay with me. As twilight deepened over the battlefield, Elias trudged on, dragging the hover sled and its unlikely passenger toward the uncertain safety ahead. Behind them, the ruins fell silent, unaware that in the ashes of war, a fragile bond had begun to grow. Behind enemy lines, the glow of the battlefield faded behind them, swallowed by the jagged terrain ahead. Elias pulled the hover sled through a canyon where shadows clung to the rock walls, hoping they'd mask his movement. His shoulders burned with exhaustion, but he didn't slow. The Croth warrior on the sled stirred again, his mandibles clicking softly. "You risk much, human," Threx rasped. Elias kept his eyes forward. "I've been told I'm bad at following rules." They reached a sheer outcropping. Beyond it, Elias could see the scarred expanse of no man's land, littered with mines and broken machines. His HUD pinged, an old maintenance access hatch half buried in rubble, a tunnel network abandoned after the first wave of bombings. He set the sled down, pried the hatch open with his rebar lever, and peered into darkness. A foul, metallic scent drifted up. "Guess we're going underground," Elias muttered. The tunnel sloped steeply. Elias guided the sled down, boots scraping against the concrete. Dim emergency lights still flickered along the ceiling, throwing broken shadows. Pipes hissed steam. Somewhere in the distance, water dripped steadily. As they moved deeper, Threx's voice broke the silence. "Human, why fight?" "Croth." Elias hesitated. "Because you invaded our colonies. Took our cities. Because my brother died in one of your assaults." The alien's mandibles flexed. "We were told humans struck first." Elias stopped walking. "That's not true. War. Stories change, depending on who tells them." Threx rasped, his black eyes dull with pain. Elias didn't know how to answer that, so he kept pulling the sled forward. A distant clatter echoed through the tunnels. Elias crouched instantly, hand on his rifle. A drone searchlight swept across a side corridor ahead. Its mechanical hum grew louder. "Hold still," Elias whispered. He yanked a tarp from his pack and threw it over Threx, then crouched low, pressing himself into a recess as the drone glided past. Its sensors hummed, red beams scanning the corridor. Elias held his breath. For one tense moment, the beam lingered on the sled. Then the drone moved on, disappearing into the shadows. Elias exhaled slowly and lifted the tarp. Threx's mandibles twitched. "You shielded me." Elias gave a tired grin. "Well, you can't die on me now, big guy." They continued through the tunnels for another hour. The air grew colder, damp with condensation. Elias's legs trembled with each step. He checked his scanner. Signs of life ahead. A faint energy signature marked an old Croth outpost, abandoned but intact. When they reached it, Elias eased the sled into a cavernous chamber lined with alien glyphs. Glow strips flickered to life, bathing the room in green light. Elias spotted medical crates overturned in a corner. He rummaged through them, pulling out strange crystalline instruments. Most were shattered, but a slender injector hummed when he tested it. "This might actually help," Elias murmured, crouching by Threx. The alien watched with weary eyes. "You would use Croth tools on me?" Elias snorted. "You're Croth, aren't you?" He worked carefully, mimicking the medical glyphs on the injector screen, until it delivered a dose of glowing serum into Threx's carapace. The alien stiffened, a deep groan vibrating through his chest, then sagged back with a shudder. His breathing evened out. For a long moment, neither spoke. The distant rumble of the war above seemed a world away in this forgotten chamber. Threx finally broke the silence. "In my clan, to save a warrior is to bind a soul. You bind mine now." Elias frowned. "I didn't do this for some debt. I just couldn't leave you." Threx's mandibles clicked in a slow rhythm. "Approval, maybe. Then you are different. Not like those who burn without thought." Elias sat back against the cold wall, rifle across his knees. He was bone-tired, but something warm stirred in his chest, a strange sense of purpose. "Get some rest," he said softly. "We're not out yet." Threx's eyes drifted shut, but his voice rumbled one last time. "Human. Elias. I will remember." Elias closed his own eyes for a moment, listening to the distant hum of alien machinery. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew this. On a battlefield where mercy had no place, he'd chosen to make space for it anyway. And that choice felt heavier, and more important, than any order he'd ever obeyed. The cost of compassion. Elias woke to the low hum of alien machinery and the dim green glow of the abandoned outpost. For a moment, he forgot where he was. Then the weight of exhaustion and the sight of the massive figure on the sled brought memory rushing back. Threx's breathing had steadied overnight, but the alien's lower limbs remained lifeless. Elias crouched beside him, adjusting the splints and checking the foam seals. "You're still with me," Elias whispered. Threx's black eyes opened, slow but focused. "Painless. You work well." "Yeah," Elias said, rubbing gritty eyes. "But we can't stay here. Patrols will sweep this sector soon." He checked his map. The nearest extraction zone was across a stretch of territory no sane soldier crossed. A minefield protected by automated turrets that fired at anything unrecognized. For humans, there was a slim chance. For a Croth? No chance at all. Elias paced the chamber, thinking. He could leave Threx here, call in his own evac, and hope the aliens' people found him first. But that wasn't who he was. He'd chosen this path the moment he pressed med-foam into enemy wounds. "All right," he muttered, kneeling by Threx. "It's going to be rough, but I got a plan." He stripped off his own chest plate, exposing the ID beacon woven into the armor. With a multi-tool, he detached it and began rewiring it into the sled's control system. His hands trembled from lack of sleep, but he kept working. Threx watched silent until he asked, "What doing?" "Turrets scanned for friendly signatures," Elias explained. "They'll see my beacon on you and hold fire. Maybe, and you." Elias gave a tired grin. "I'll be right behind you. Just try not to fall off." He scavenged a sheet of alloy from a shattered door and bent it into a crude shield to mount on the sled side. Then he wrapped Threx in the tarp, tucking it close to dampen his alien biosigns. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best chance they had. Elias powered up the sled and gripped the guide tether. "Here we go." They left the tunnel and emerged into harsh daylight. The wind swept across the open ground ahead, carrying dust and the distant smell of ozone. Far beyond, the automated turrets waited like silent sentinels. Elias took a deep breath and stepped forward, dragging the sled behind him. The first turret swiveled, scanning. A sharp alarm chirped, then went silent as the beacon data flashed green on its sensors. Elias's heart pounded as he kept walking, every step feeling like a trigger waiting to snap. Halfway through, a sudden burst of static roared in his earpiece. "Vance!" Reiner's voice thundered. "What the hell are you doing out there? Your signal shows movement in a restricted zone." Elias ignored it, focusing on the sled's hum and the whine of servos. "Vance, respond. You're dragging something. Identify, or we fire on your position." He couldn't answer. His throat was too tight. Another turret locked briefly on him, then swept away. The shield he'd mounted on the sled sparked as a stray round grazed it, sending shrapnel whistling past Elias's head. He stumbled, but kept going. When they reached the last stretch, Elias felt his knees weaken. Sweat stung his eyes, and his side burned where shrapnel had nicked him. He pushed through, dragging the sled until they finally crossed the last marker. Ahead, a human evac craft sat on scorched landing pads. Ramp lowered, crew rushing to meet him. They stopped dead when they saw the sled's cargo. "Corporal!" a medic shouted, leveling his weapon. "That's a Dominion warrior. What are you doing?" Elias stepped in front of Threx, rifle dangling but steady. His voice came out hoarse but unwavering. "He's wounded. He's under my protection. You shoot him, you shoot me first." The crew hesitated, weapons wavering. The medic looked to the pilot, who looked back at Elias's blood-streaked face and the stubborn set of his jaw. "Sir, We can't, the medic began. You can, Elias snapped. Because we're better than them. Now help me, or get out of my way. Silence hung in the air, broken only by the whine of the sled. Then, slowly, the medic lowered his rifle and stepped forward with his kit. Fine, but this is on you, Corporal. Elias sagged in relief as they lifted Threx onto a stretcher and carried him aboard. He followed, limping up the ramp, exhaustion finally catching up. As the ship lifted off, Threx turned his head toward him, mandibles flexing. His voice, though weak, was steady. Human, Elias, you have my life. My oath is yours. Elias met his gaze and managed a faint smile. Just get better. That's all I ask. The ship banked toward the distant stars, leaving behind the battlefield and the war for now. But Elias knew something larger had shifted, something no order could erase. One choice, one act of compassion, had bound two enemies together. And somewhere deep inside, Elias believed that might just change everything.